Shalom, friends. Once again, I'm not going to talk about Parshat Shavua. Let me back up and explain, even though it may be clear already. In Eish Kodesh, well, let's go back even before that. In Derech HaMelech, the Rebbe's drashot from before the war, we have no drashot whatsoever for all of Sefer Vayikra except for one drasha from Parshat Zav. If you go to Eish Kodesh, so both in Tafshin Aleph and Tafshin Bet, 1941-42, there are almost a drasha for Parshat Vayikra. There's big gaps from around Pesach time till Parshat Chukad in the middle of Bamidbar. And so we basically just have a drashot for these parshot only in Tafshin in 1940. And we've talked about them numerous times. So I feel like at this point, it's better to take this time, instead of kind of rehashing things we've already discussed, to talk about other things in the Rebbe's teaching. So therefore, I'm again going to go to Zav V'Ziruz, the Rebbe's personal diary, mystical diary, and talk for a moment about chapter 10 and chapter 12, which are quite similar. And what the Rebbe talks about in those chapters is, I think in a way it's a very modern perspective. He talks about the importance of finding your own self and your own mikoriyut, your own individuality, your own originality in the way that you serve Hashem and in your presence in the world. I think it's maybe very different than what we would expect. I think today in the so-called Haredi world, there's a lot of emphasis on sameness, at least seemingly, sameness in dress, sameness in minagim, etc. But the Rebbe talks about how important it is to be yourself and to leave your own mark in the world. So he says, for example, in chapter 10, look at yourself. Have you taken yourself and found the truth of yourself? Are you an individual or just one of the herd? And he goes on to say that a person must set themselves apart with their own personal qualities and to have their own opinions, etc. And he says if you don't do that, then he says you're not a Jew and you're not really even a person. And he goes on a little bit later and he says, let's look at the Rambam and the Ramban, two of the greatest Rishonim, early medieval authorities, both from Spain. Many parallels between them, yet absolutely different in their whole perspectives on Torah. And if a person is even a little bit learned and they would learn something from Ramban or Rambam without seeing the source inside, they would pretty much always immediately be able to tell who it is who's talking, both from the standpoint of the style, the content, the Torah perspective, etc. So that's what he says, and then he goes on in chapter 12, which is very short, and he says it's very important for a person's place to be felt. And he says, how would it be in the world? Could we imagine the world if the Baal Shem Tov hadn't been here, chas v'shalom? Meaning, the Baal Shem Tov and all the Gedolei Torah left a mark on the world. They changed the whole reality of the world of Torah, whether that's the Rambam and the Ramban that we spoke about before, Rashi and the Tosfot and the other medieval authorities, the great Mekubalim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Lag BaOmer coming up in a few days, and the Ari and the Ramak, the Ramchal, and the Gedolei Hasidut, starting with the Baal Shem Tov and all his holy Talmidim and their Talmidim till our very day. The world as we know it would be unrecognizable if these people had not left their individual, unique mark on the world. Now, none of us are claiming to be anywhere near the level of any of these Gedolei Torah, but all of us in our own little tiny corner should realize that, there should be something that, after 120 years, that people think back on us and they say, this was what was special about him. This was the way that she did things. This was her opinion. This was his derech, his way in Torah. This was the way he davened, the way she learned Torah, the way they gave over Torah, the way they did a certain mitzvah. That everyone should find their place and not just be part of the herd. So within the foundations of halacha and our holy customs and the way we do things, there's a lot of room for individuality, and that's the Rebbe of Piaseczner says a very important part of our Avodat Hashem. So may we all be blessed to find our own letter in the Torah, our own way of doing things the proper way that's holy and authentic to us. Call to Shabbat Shalom. May we hear good tidings. Be well.